Hey, hello and welcome to Prime Code Media. My name is Sana Mapena. In this video, I'll be discussing the CSS Z Index. Before we start with our discussion, it's important to note that HTML elements have a predefined or default display rules. We can change these default display rules by using the Z index, which is the focus of our discussion in this video. So what is the Z index? The Z index specifies the stack order of elements. It specifies which page elements will be displayed on top of the other ones. This property is called the Z index because it refers to the element's position on the Z axis as opposed to the X axis or Y axis. Here's the syntax for specifying the CSS Z index property. The property can be specified with an integer value, which will either be positive, 0, or negative. The element with a large Z index value will appear on top. Let's take a look at this example. Here I have a stack of 4 div elements: red, green, blue, and purple. At the moment, they all don't have the Z index property. Their current order is determined by the order of the divs in my HTML code right here. Now what I want to do is to use the Z index property to change this stack order. But before I do that, it's important to note that only positioned elements can be stacked. This means we need to be able to move elements in order to make changes to the Z index, and to be able to move the elements, we need to position them first. I discuss position properties in detail in separate videos on this channel. Please feel free to also check them out. Now, the first thing that I am going to do in order to change the stack order, I'm going to target the red div here. I'm going to do that inside the CSS here, inside the style sheet. So here is the red. I'm going to give it a Z index value. So the Z index, I'm going to give it a Z index value of 4, like so. So as you can see, now the red div has moved to the front. It is now on top of all the other divs, the purple, blue, and green. And this is because now the red div has a higher Z index value compared to these other 3 divs. Let's move ahead and give now the green div. I'm going to give the green div a Z index value of 4. Like so. Of 3, let me give it a Z index value of 3. Now the Z index is just right behind the green div is just behind the red div, and this is because the red div, remember, it has a Z index value of 4, and the green div has a Z index value of 3. So what then this means is that when I give I'm going to give the blue div as a Z index value of 2. What then that means is that it is just going to move from where it is right now to behind the green div. So let's give it a Z index value of 2, like so. So now the blue div has moved to behind the green div. So now the purple div, so I can give the purple div a Z index value of 1, but that is not going to change anything because 1 and 0 are smaller than 2. So let me just give it a Z index value of 1. You'll see that nothing is going to change, and this is because 1 and 0 are smaller than the 2. So it is still where it was, and we have managed to change this stack order by using the CSS Z index property. The Z index property can also take a negative integer value. Uh, Remember, the default integer value is 0. So what then this means is that an element with a negative Z index value will appear behind elements with a 0 Z index value or auto. Please note that auto sets the staking level to 0. So to show you or to put this into practice, I'm going to first remove the Z index value of these divs so that the stack is back to how it was when we started. Let me delete the Z index values of all these divs. So right now the stack order of our divs is back to how it was when we first started. So they are back to their default. The Z index value is 0, all of them. Now I am going to give the purple div a negative Z index value. So right here I'm going to say the Z index value of the purple div, let me put it at -1. So right now the Z index is behind or at the bottom, so it is there behind all these divs. I can even, for example, if you want to have a clear view of this, I'll just move it, give it a 0 margin at the top. I'll say top 0. So you can see now that the purple div is behind all these other 3 divs, the blue, the green, and the red. Now this confirms what I was saying earlier, which is that an element with a negative Z index value will appear behind elements with a 0 Z index value or auto. So which is the case now. The blue, the green, and the red elements have a Z index value of 0. This one, the purple element, has a Z index value of -1, and that is why it now appears, or it is positioned behind all these other elements which have a 0 Z index value, which is their default Z index value. Now if you look at these divs, you'll see that they are child elements of the body. So let's take a look here. So as you can see right here, these divs, they are all child elements of the body, so they have the same parent. Now what happens if, for example, we have on the same page 2 parent elements that each have own child elements? That brings us to what is called the staking context. The staking context refers to a group of elements that have a common parent. Here is an example of what I am talking about. Here I have split these divs into pairs, with each pair having its own parent. So I have 2 parent elements that each have 2 child elements. I have named these parent elements parent 1 and parent 2. So these are the IDs. Now to show you how staking context works, let me target these parent elements inside the CSS. I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to use the hashtag sign. Remember, the ID name is preceded by a pound sign or hashtag sign. So I'm going to say parent 1, then followed by a set of curly braces. And then what I'm going to do, I am going to give this div a position. I'm going to position it. Remember, only position the elements can be stacked. So the position I'm going to give it a relative position, and then a Z index. The Z index value of this div will be auto. Remember, auto sets the staking level to 0. And then moving on, I'm going to now target the second parent, that is parent 2, hashtag sign parent 2 set of curly braces. And then I'm also going to position this div. I'm going to give this one an absolute position, absolute, like so. And then the Z index, I'm going to give it a Z index value of 1. And once I'm done, now moving on, what I want now to do, I want to draw your attention to these two divs, the red div inside parent 1 and the purple div inside parent 2. So let's check the Z index value of these two elements. So here is the red div. The red div has a Z index value of 1. Okay, so the Z index value for this element is 1, and the Z index value of the purple div is auto, which means it's 0. So the red div has a higher index value than the purple div. But I want you to see what happens when I move this parent element on top of this one. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into parent 2 and move it up by giving it a 30 pixel margin at the top. So I'm going to say top and then say 30 pixel. This will move it up. Now this div has moved up, but look at purple and the red div. The purple div is sitting on top of the red div, and this is despite the purple div having a smaller Z index value, which is 0, compared to the higher or bigger Z index value of red, which is 1. Now, why is that? This is because parent 2 has a larger Z index value. The Z index value of parent 2 is 1. So that is why the purple div, despite having a 0 Z index value, is still able to sit on top of the red div, which has a larger Z index value. If you find this confusing, which I must admit it does, especially if it's your first encounter with the Z index property, please watch this video again. Also check MDN Web Docs. They have a very detailed documentation on this topic of the CSS Z Index property. And that brings us to the end of our discussion of the CSS Z Index property. Please subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to be notified when new videos come out. Thank you so much for watching. Till we code again next time. Bye bye.